in Glasgow about 5 years now, and we've gradually added new people to our number, but there's myself, Mr. Grenville Oates, who's an adult urologist, Dr. Ehab Shaheen, who's a paediatric nephrologist, and more recently we've added an adult nephrologist to the clinic who advises on mTOR inhibitors. And Judith McKee, who's sitting in the audience, has always been there from the beginning. She's a podiatrist, and Lynn Shields is often there as well to speak to families if they wish. We have contact with lots of other departments throughout Glasgow and Scotland and the UK, but the main people we deal with are the paediatric neurologists, dermatology, and if necessary we have a respiratory physician who's got a particular interest in lymphangiomyomatosis, LAM for short, and there are also various experts around the UK that we can approach with particular pieces of advice. So the clinic still runs approximately every 2 to 3 months, and since March we've seen around 97 different individuals, some only once, some several times. And those are both adult and paediatric patients, and we usually try and split them into a paediatric clinic and an adult clinic, but sometimes, for convenience, it's easier to see more than one member of the family from different generations at once. So we can be flexible that way. So the main issues that we deal with in the clinic, having our renal experts, are the kidney aspects of tuberous sclerosis complex, and we arrange screening, looking for lesions in the kidneys, and can assess what size they are and whether they're growing, and can give advice. And we can also obviously check blood pressure and kidney function in the clinic as well, and give advice about what treatments might be suitable, whether that be embolization, which is becoming less, we're offering less, or whether the patient might actually be eligible to start treatment on an mTOR inhibitor, such as everolimus or sirolimus. One of the other things we get asked about are particular problems that perhaps a person has been having recently with behaviour or other issues, and Judith McKee is often there to give helpful advice about where to go next or things that can be done. We always have to be aware, if it's a new symptom, could there be some underlying explanation for this change in behaviour? So we might arrange some specific investigations, or whether if a person has behaviours that are suggestive of autistic spectrum, whether it might be helpful to have a formal assessment of that, to advise on strategies to help with that. Other issues are poorly controlled epilepsy. Saying that, we don't have a neurologist who comes to the clinic regularly, but we can get advice and support from the team who are on the same site as us in the neurosciences department, and Dr. John Paul Leach is one of the neurologists who helps us if there are particular issues with epilepsy. So we are, as well as having a number of doctors in the clinic, we try to liaise as well as we can with local doctors regarding screening and follow-up. We can refer on to other specialists, including respiratory physician and to dermatology. And as a geneticist, I can offer to test other family members for the TSC1 or TSC2 mutation, which is in the family, can give advice about family planning, and we can offer to test babies at birth as well, so that we can be get in early with any recognition of seizures and management if the baby is affected. So in the clinic, we tend to use the 2012 International Consensus Guidelines to guide us as to how to follow up individuals with TSC. We were hoping to get a more British guideline, but I think that hasn't really happened. So this is a paper which was published in 2013 is what we use as the main guide for how to advise people about what screening they should have. And they would suggest that individuals under the age of 25 should be having regular MRI brain scans to look for evidence of SEGA, which if left can grow to a size which would cause symptoms. And with the licensing of mTOR inhibitors, we're now in a position that we could offer treatment at a pre-symptomatic stage. So therefore it could be beneficial to arrange scanning of the brain as a screening thing rather than waiting until people had symptoms, which was what used to happen in the past. The guidance also suggests doing regular monitoring for TAND, so that is tuberous sclerosis associated neuropsychiatric disorder. And one of my slides did have a picture of the TAND questionnaire, but I've managed to lose that. But we're starting to hand this out in our clinic so that carers or individuals with the condition can fill it out, and we can go through it and discuss if there are any particular issues, and that potentially it could be a way of monitoring if there's been a change over time as well. From the point of view of the kidneys, this is a lifelong issue that can affect individuals with TS, maybe more so from teenage years onwards, and we would certainly be suggesting that individuals have regular blood pressure monitoring with their GP potentially, and that they could have their kidney function checked with a blood test every year. And as well, that we would recommend screening of the kidneys using either ultrasound scanning or preferably MRI scanning. And for individuals who may not tolerate MRI scan, who are maybe going to have a general anaesthetic, we would certainly recommend trying to arrange the MRI brain and kidneys at the same time under the same anaesthetic. Also on the slide, it should have said that the guidelines suggest that females over the age of 18 should have a baseline lung assessment, and then that could be repeated depending on what the initial findings were and on symptoms. And other recommendations are regular dental checkups and regular eye assessments. So in the time that we've been running the clinic, we have had some progress, made some progress. We have started a number of individuals on mTOR inhibitors. We applied for IPTRs, so individual patient treatment requests, for a number of individuals, and there are currently, I think, 4 adults from our clinic on everolimus, and there are also a couple of teenagers on sirolimus started by the paediatric team. And we've certainly given advice to other clinicians around the UK, around Scotland, about initiating treatment for other patients. So there are probably a handful, there's certainly about 10 patients currently on mTOR inhibitors that I'm aware of. We've also been referring a number of patients to dermatology, and they have had some benefits of using topical mTOR inhibitors for the facial angiofibromas. So I think to begin with they were crushing up tablets and people were putting on a bit of a gritty paste, but I think they're now using more of a liquid, so that's maybe easier to apply, and a lot of people have found some benefit from that. Obviously, we are based in Glasgow, in the west of Scotland, and that is, provides patient care for around half the population of Scotland, but there's people much further afield who are being cared for in the Highlands and elsewhere. And we're currently in discussions with the National Services Division to try and make care for individuals with TSC more equitable around Scotland, and we're still trying to thrash out how best to do that. But certainly we have had some referrals from elsewhere to give a second opinion, and we're very happy to give advice to people who ask us, and some people are quite happy to come down to Glasgow, and we're happy to see them if they want to come. So apart from the clinic, other things going on in Scotland at the moment is, I don't know if you may have heard of the Tron trial, which has been up and running for a while. It was originally it was set up in Cardiff, and we've just recently managed to set up Glasgow as a centre for the study. So this is looking at the use of mTOR inhibitor in neurocognitive problems in TSC, and they're looking to recruit individuals between the age of 16 and 60 who have got a measurable problem with memory or learning, but must also be able to be assessed by a psychologist who will go through a number of questionnaires. So there are a few criteria just to do with how the study is run. It's a randomised controlled trial, so some individuals will be put on everolimus while others will be on a placebo. And you would have to attend for 8 visits. So in the past they were trying to encourage individuals to go down to Cardiff, but now we're able to offer the same study in Glasgow. So we've now got a few people have just been enrolled onto the study, and if anybody else is interested, we're happy to recruit some more. There's a few other research studies and trials ongoing in the UK. Cardiff has also set up one of these new genetic technologies, next generation sequencing, to try and identify mutations in individuals who have got TSC or a TSC-like condition, but so far all their tests have come back negative, and they're hoping to use these new techniques to try and identify the genetic change in them. Birmingham have got a study looking at children with TSC and focusing in on the social and communication problems and behavioural aspects of the condition. And we're all waiting with bated breath for the EXIST-3 trial to report back. So this is a trial, unfortunately we weren't able to be involved in this, but this was looking at use of everolimus in individuals with difficult to control epilepsy. So hopefully, I believe that initial results are promising, but we're waiting for them to report back. And I think that was everything I was going to say. I don't think I've missed any of my other slides. So if anybody has any questions.
I wanted to ask about the MRI scan.
Yes.
Why is it just up to age 25?
Brain MRI is up to age 25 because certainly over the years they've found that it's very, very unusual for a SEGA to appear after that age. It is much more likely to appear in the first couple of decades of life, and that's why we're doing it then. So if you haven't had one by the age of 25, it'd be extremely unlikely to develop a new one at that stage.
Hi, I've just recently been to plastic surgeon up at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary for my thumb. I think the growth, which you mentioned, might be to do with my TS, but I've got one balloon in my left as well. But would there be a point where they stop growing, or would they just continue to grow? Is that all connected?
I think it's very hard to know because everybody's different with the condition. So some people aren't bothered with these at all. Other people, they can be there but not be too troublesome, and other people they can be they can grow quite a lot, and you know.
TS is like just gross everywhere in the body kind of thing. Is it,
Yes, but it affects different people in different ways.
Of course.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
I'm sure Dr. Josh would be very happy to speak to people one-to-one later over the coffee. So I'd now like to introduce Heather Nollier. She is a Policy and Parliamentary Officer for Carers Trust in Scotland. Carers Trust Scotland is the largest provider of comprehensive carer support services in Scotland through a unique network of independent carers centres and young carer services throughout Scotland. Heather is their Policy and Parliamentary Officer and has kindly come along today to provide everyone with an update on carers policy. Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to just use this microphone?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah. I've got that voice anyway.
All right.
Sorry, I thought I'd read it. Thank you. These things are never easy to do, are they? Great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. And as I said, I'm Heather. I'm the policy officer at an organisation called Carers Trust Scotland, and we primarily support unpaid carers, so people who are looking after family members with really any kind of condition or difficulty that means they can't support themselves. So I'm really pleased to be here. So thank you very much for inviting me along. And I'm going to speak primarily about carers' rights because there's been quite a lot of changes in the past few years about different laws for carers, different policies, different things that have happened, and these affect all carers, so it's important for everybody to know about them. And this is, I'm not going to read this out, and this is just a quote from Nicola Sturgeon, our First Minister, who was addressing the Carers Parliament last October. Excuse me. It's the first time she'd been to the Carers Parliament. It's something that's been running since 2012, so it was really great to have her there for the first time. And she's speaking here about human rights and how rights for carers are so important that they're not, things that support carers shouldn't be seen as optional extras. There should be rights that are there for everyone, and that kind of cements together everything that's happened over the past few years when it comes to better rights for carers. So we have government backing. Everybody is keen to make sure that carers' rights are realised, and the issue, I think, as for many things, many different types of trying to get policy into practice, is making sure that all these rights are consistent across Scotland, across all the different services that you guys work with, and that all the different services that exist for all carers needs to be consistent, and that's how we make sure that people's rights are realised. So this is a little bit of a timeline, things that have happened for carers and their families over the past few years. The first thing that kind of cemented rights for carers is the Community Care and Health Act. This is probably best known for being the one that introduced free personal care for older people, but it also gave a statutory right for a carers assessment. So councils had to assess carers who were providing levels of care to people. So that's one of the first kind of major things that the Scottish Parliament did, which is very good, and that's been kind of consistently implemented since then. The Working Families Act came next, and that's a UK Westminster Parliament Act. It wasn't specific to Scotland, but this is one that supports carers who are able to maintain employment alongside a caring role. It means they've got more rights for looking after primarily children, but also vulnerable adults who carers might look after, making sure that the workplaces can support them and they're not subject to any kind of difficulties at work because of trying to maintain a caring role. The Equality Act is another big one that brought in protections for carers. It protects carers from discrimination or harassment because of their caring role or linked to the person that they're looking after. If they have a disability, it protects them as well, so that's quite an important one. The major thing for Scotland in the more recent years is the Carer Strategy 2010, technically to 2015, but it was extended for a year into 2016 because of things that I'll be talking about in a minute. So it's not a law, it's a policy document. It's a big hefty thing, a couple of inches thick, and it's been quite well used over the past few years. It sets out key actions to support carers and improve things for them, which is really, really useful. Some things have been achieved, other things do still need to be worked upon. It was primarily for local councils and for health boards to implement, but it's a useful kind of reference document for them. You know, if we're having a chat with service providers, we can kind of refer back to it and say, look, this is what you should be doing, this is what you said you'd work towards, why haven't you done it now, 6 years later, that kind of thing. So it's really, really useful to have that there as a reference document. The Social Care Self-Directed Support Act is another kind of big change in the past couple of years. It was the first act of the Scottish Parliament to make provisions for support to be offered to carers if they need it. So local councils do have the power to provide support to carers if they've done an assessment and it's become obvious that the carer needs some support. Again, it's quite new. It's taken a while for things to be implemented. Different local authorities are doing things in different ways, but again, on the whole, it's something good to be able to refer back to and make sure that carers can get support if they are needing it. And the Carers Scotland Act 2016, not yet implemented, was only passed earlier this year in the Scottish Parliament, but this is the kind of pinnacle of everything, and it does supersede some of the other acts that I've put up there, and this is the big thing that I have been working on over the past couple of years. It really, really changes things for carers, and it really, really brings carers' rights into more focus, and so that's the thing that we'll be working on over the next couple of years to make sure that things are as good as they can possibly be. And these are the reasons why carers do need support. Hopefully this isn't a slide that I would usually use in like a room like this with an audience like this, but this is what I take to local authorities, health boards, to MSPs and to other government officials to say, you know, why should we support carers? Why is it important? So carers allowance is only £62.10 per week. You'll know that if you do receive it. That works out about £1.75 an hour. Which is obviously quite far below any kind of appropriate wage to give to people. And obviously for most people, it's not 35 hours of care a week, it's far more than that, you know that. It's a 24-hour-a-day job for some people. And this is why carers need support, because it's not right that that's all that people are offered. And again, that's something the Scottish Government are aiming to change with the devolution of social security to the Scottish Parliament, which is happening now. There's a consultation on, which I believe some colleagues are talking about later as well, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to get involved and say why, you know, carers allowance should be higher. These are a couple of stats from research that Carers Trust has done over the past few years. 87% of Scotland's carers feel that care responsibilities have a negative impact on their own health and well-being. This could be from isolation or stress, could be actual physical harm from lifting and handling people if that's something that you have to do. It could be from never having a good night's sleep, ever. Not being able to eat regularly or healthily. It could be financial worries, depression or anxiety. Again, I don't think that's something that I have to tell this audience, but it can really, really affect people, and that's why it's important for carers to be given support from statutory organisations like local authorities. We found that 40% of carers in the research we did said they'd put off medical treatment for themselves because of the impact it would have on the caring role. It's the person that you care for comes first. It's easy for a lot of carers to neglect their own health. This can be something like not having the opportunity to go to the dentist for a regular checkup, or it can be more serious things. Even things like planned hospital procedures may have to be cancelled if carers can't find replacement care. We know of a carer who he woke in the night with quite severe chest pain, but held off calling the ambulance until 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, because that was when care workers would arrive from the local authority, and that was when he felt able to call an ambulance and find out that he was having a heart attack, but he knew that there wouldn't be anything there. So that's the kind of thing that we need to change as well. We need to make sure that carers have got emergency plans in place to make sure that their own health is looked after as well. And that's something that the new Carers Act is going to have the ability to put in place, all carers will be able to have an emergency plan with the local authority to make sure that if that kind of terrible situation does happen, then there'll be something in place there. So I think, where do we go from here? We've got all this legislation, we have all this need for support, but again, how do we make it work in reality for people's lives? Because a lot of, policies written up in a cupboard somewhere is one thing, but how do we actually make it work? This is just a quick rundown of the carer strategy. Again, this is, what the carer strategy said it would work on and what local authorities should do to improve support for carers. And like I said earlier, it's had some impact, it has made some changes. Improving identification of carers was a big one, so making sure that local authorities, social work and health boards, all throughout health boards, doctors, nurses, allied health professionals were able to identify carers and signpost them into better support, whether that's condition-specific organisations like the TSA or to carer centres, which are the organisations that I work with who provide direct support to carers, whether that's emotional support or help with money and benefits, or more practical support like making sure that replacement care can get put in place. But identification is kind of the first step there. That's how it works. Improving the experience of the carers assessment, like I said, local authorities do different things. They have their own autonomy, they can do that, but we've ended up in a situation where there are 32 different carers assessments, one for each local authority, and so you are getting maybe different experiences depending on where in Scotland you live. Again, that's something the Carers Act is hopefully going to not fix, I would hesitate to say that because it's early days yet, but make sure there's a more consistent approach to carer support across Scotland. Information advice is a really important one, as you know, whether that's again from a condition-specific organisation or support for information advice about caring. It's very important to have that. Training for carers to make sure that they know what they're doing and are doing it safely. If that's maybe lifting or handling or administering medication, it's important for carers to access training if they feel they need it, and that's something that carer centres can offer as well, and something that health boards and social work are able to offer for some people. And making sure that there's enough respite and short breaks available for people. You can access grants to purchase services that would help you, or just make sure that you're aware of the kind of range of short breaks that are available. There are organisations that can do this. And there was also part of the carer strategy called Getting It Right for Young Carers, which had specific outcomes for people under the age of 18. And that's been really, really important as well to make sure that young people aren't doing inappropriate caring roles, and making sure that they're still successful in education and they can move into the workplace if they want to, that kind of thing. So the Carers Scotland Act, as I said, this has been something that I've been working on since 2013 actually. I didn't put that on the slide, but there was a consultation throughout the first half of 2014, and then the law went into Parliament and it passed earlier this year. Implementation is going to be next year and running into 2018. One of the aims of the Carers Act is to neaten up a lot of the legislation and make sure that it's as improved as it could be, and make many changes. It went through Parliament okay. There was a little bit of opposition from some. It's not quite as good as we think it could have been. There's a lot of again, local authorities were opposed to being told what to do by the government, and so there's been a little bit of they have quite a lot of autonomy, but still it should be good. Local authorities will set their own local carer strategies so that you'll be able to see what your specific council is planning to do to support carers, and they'll have to consult directly with people who live in that area, so that's quite good. It's aimed to make sure there's clarity and ease of understanding about what carers are entitled to, so if it ties together all those different bits of legislation, then that's a way to start that. And information advice that's provided to carers through it will be very kind of easy to understand and very clear, and that should be very, very good. And the key change in it is making it absolutely mandatory for local authorities to provide support to carers. So at the moment it's just a power. Local authorities can give you a carers assessment, but they don't have to provide support. That's going to change, and if there's an assessment and it's obvious that you need support, they have to provide it, they have to find a way to do it, whether that's providing services for you, giving you a budget, or kind of any other way to get support. That will have to happen in the next couple of years, and that's been the really major key thing that we fought for, and I'm really happy that we managed to get that because it is so important. These are the other things that the Carers Act brings in as well, so not quite as important as a duty to provide support, but there are lots and lots of duties, so things that local authorities, local councils and health boards have to do now. The government has stipulated that they have to do it. So the carers assessment is changing. It's going to be called an adult carer support plan, and the young carer equivalent will be a young carer statement. It removes what we call the regular and substantial test. So at the moment you can only have a carer's assessment if you're providing regular and substantial amounts of care, and again that can vary across local authorities as to what they think that is. So now all carers will be able to get an adult carer support plan, and in that way, if your caring role is changing over time for any kind of reason, if the person you're looking after needs more or less support, the local authority will still know about it. It won't just be people at the more kind of severe end of the caring role. So everyone will be in touch with social work if they want to be. And if things change and if you need a bit more support or a bit less support, then that can be actioned quite quickly. So that's one of the major changes that that's bringing in. The duty to support carers I've already mentioned. There is also a power to provide support as well. If you've had your adult carer support plan and it's found that you don't need support from the local authority, they can still provide that to you in terms of making sure you're aware of preventative services, making sure you're signposted to organisations like the TSA or any other organisation that you might be working with that can help you, provide information and advice, access to grants for breaks, that kind of thing. The local authority will just have to be a bit more kind of clued up on what's happening in their local area and make sure they can link people in with third sector organisations. There's a duty to involve carers in carers services. I've spoken about that briefly, but every local authority will have its own carers strategy, and carers will have to be involved in the planning of that and to see what services are available in your local area. And there'll be a duty to provide information and advice. All local authority areas have a carers service at the moment. About half of them are members of our network, so I work with them directly, but every area, I think even now, even the Western Isles has somewhere now, so that's great. We've got full coverage across the whole of Scotland. But if services didn't exist, local authorities would have to fund them and provide them. So there's a duty now for local authorities to make sure there's a carer centre that can provide advice, and that extends to other services as well, like condition-specific organisations. They will have to make sure they are able to provide advice directly to carers. So it'll all come together, I think, and it'll work quite well. I spoke briefly as well about social security devolution. This is something that's happening kind of at the same time as the Carers Act. There's been a big change for Scotland since the referendum a couple of years ago, and a lot of the benefits that affect carers and people with disabilities are being devolved to the Scottish Parliament, so there'll be more control over them from this end of things. There's 11 different benefits being devolved, including carers allowance, and the majority of disability benefits, apart from employment support allowance, that one is remaining with Westminster, and not universal credit either, but the majority of the disability benefits like DLA and like PIP will be under the control of the Scottish Parliament. So for a lot of people, people feel that that'll make it kind of easier to just deal with the whole system, really, because it won't be the DWP anymore. It'll be a Scottish agency that is kind of closer to where a lot of people in Scotland are. And there's a huge consultation taking place at the moment. It is actually, I do have it with me because I've been carrying it around since it came out, really. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. Happily, there are easy read versions available, and there's lots of consultations going on across Scotland through different organisations that kind of break it down, and so you can look at the bits that matter to you, depending on what benefits you receive or what the person you look after receives. But there is, the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government rather, are making a big deal out of this. There is a potential for change across pretty much every aspect of it. They're looking at everything, and everything could change at the moment, including the actual amount of the award. That is happening for carers allowance. They have, the Scottish Government has confirmed that they'll be increasing the amount of carers allowance that's available. They'll be bringing it up to at least the level of job seekers allowance, which is £73 10, I believe, for the over 25s. Again, it's not, I find it difficult to get too excited about that because I don't think that's a great amount for people to live on either, but it's better than what we have now, and it's a commitment from the government, and as I say, there's potential to change that, and where we'll definitely put in a response that says increase it by a little bit more than that so that people are able to live on a decent amount of money. It's looking at a lot of things as well, like the operational aspects of the system, what an agency would look like, should it just be a call centre, should there be face-to-face contact centres, should it be done through the local authority, should it be done through the government. All of that is in there, and it's all online as well. There's plenty of opportunities to have a look at it. And the closing date for the consultation is the 28th of October. But like I said, there's plenty of consultation events going on, so there'll be opportunities. If you do want to get involved, then you'll be able to do that. My colleague Maggie, who was supposed to be here today but isn't, unfortunately, because she's moving house, she is the self-directed support training officer, and so she works primarily supporting carers and carer centres to access self-directed support. I've talked briefly about this. In 2013 there was an act passed by the Parliament that said that carers should be supported if they've been assessed as needing support, and with that came the SDS process as well. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that, hopefully some of you are. And now in 2018 that's moving again from the power to support them to the duty to support carers under the Carers Act. There's been a few difficulties in figuring out how self-directed support will work for carers. You know, it can be quite easy to work out kind of what someone with support needs wants, whether that's a personal assistant or whether it's a budget to buy different services. But in terms of support for carers, it's been quite a difficult, it's been difficult to figure out exactly how it would work, and local authorities have struggled with this. There's been a bit of difficulty as well perhaps with figuring out how support for carers impacts on the budget of the cared for person. If people are living together in households and families, some local authorities have kind of stepped back from that a bit and said, oh, we can't support you both at the same time. You know, it has to be one of you or both of you, so it's been quite difficult. And so that's what my colleague Maggie works on, is training local authorities and training carers to kind of be empowered and aware of their rights and what they can ask for from local authorities. I'm going to play a video when I finish speaking that Maggie's been working on as well, that kind of sets it out in a bit more easy to understand terms, hopefully. But as part of the implementation of the new legislation, the Carers Act, that should help us again find out what kind of support carers need, whether it is replacement care and how that's a service for a carer as well as the person who's been looked after, and make sure that carers are entitled to things like support with housework if they've got a very intensive caring role, you know, help like that, which local authorities have kind of been stepping back from because of cuts in the past few years. We need to make the case that it is still important for people to have all these different kinds of support so that they can live the lives that they want to live. Other future developments that we're going to be seeing is a Carers' Rights Charter. That's something that was part of the Carers Strategy, and again that's now been enshrined in the Carers Act, and that was something that the Labour Party put in quite randomly actually. It was nice to see it, but it wasn't something particularly that we were calling for as part of the Carers Act. So there'll now be a Carers Charter that will be developed that sets out everything that I've kind of talked about in this presentation, all the rights that carers are entitled to, and that'll be a document that the Scottish ministers are responsible for. So the Scottish Government will set this out and they'll make sure that all local authorities and health boards are adhering to this, so that all carers know what their rights are and that you can feel empowered through that. And this kind of goes along with the other things like providing information and advice to carers. It will be set out within this one document. The social security consultation I've also spoke about, as well as changing things in the short term. There's long-term plans to introduce a kind of new carer benefit in Scotland, so a change from carers allowance as we have now to something that's a bit different. Obviously with it being a big change, that has to be the very long term, we're talking kind of 5 to 10 years plus, but there's been discussions going on since late last year. It could be a change in eligibility, so increasing the kind of range of carers who are able to get carers allowance, or it could be a change in, what it looks like. It could be a multi-level award like DLA used to be, or that kind of thing. It could be whatever people want it to be. That's the point of a consultation, is to make sure that everyone's ideas are taken into account. And the Carers Act will also have a new strategy alongside it. There's a never-ending kind of stack of policy documents that go along with legislation changes, but again, this is the opportunity to feed into it and make sure that everything is as good as it can be, and that recognition leads to rights, leads to proper services. It's not just one thing, it's everything working together. Hello?
Can I ask, how did our community feed in to this?
Aside from the consultation processes, I think it's probably just about working with organisations like ourselves and like local carer centres, making sure that you're linked in with those kinds of networks, but with me firstly. You keep in touch with me and we'll make sure it works. But I can send information around about consultation processes that are ongoing. That's a way to kind of work directly with the Scottish Government. It's all online, there's easy read versions of everything available as well. And absolutely. I will do that, definitely.
I think the South Lanarkshire Carers sent out either South Lanarkshire Carers or Alice, but they sent out...
More than likely, yes. There's been quite a lot of things going on at the moment in the last few weeks, so yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Linda from the Scottish Commission for Learning Disability, and we're also linked in terms of all the changes with Social Security. We are going to be running specific consultation events for people with learning disabilities over September and October. So again, Lynn, if I send that information to you and you can cascade it through your networks, something that's really important.
Absolutely, yes, we think it's very important, yeah. So thank you for pushing up with listening to all that, really, because policy can be quite dull sometimes, but legislation is so important because it is how things do change from the very bottom. And in lieu of my colleague Maggie being here, because she can't be here, I'm going to play one of the digital story videos that she's been working on recently. And this is advice from carers to social work and health boards about how to be aware of carers and how to support them better. So I'm just going to play this, and then just if you agree, then we'll see, and we'll see where else we can go from there. But is it alright if I just play this video? Then yes, good.
I think if before like my mental health and stuff got really bad, if health and social care professionals had kind of asked the right questions and made sure that they'd included me rather than just focusing on my mum, kind of focusing on like the care that I was doing and stuff, then I maybe wouldn't have got as bad as what I did.
When I meet up with Kai and with other young people, I try to make it quite a pleasant experience, and so that it's a positive thing, that we're doing something that they're going to enjoy, and that'll help them to talk more about the situation. And sometimes I let them take the lead, and sometimes I'll ask a few questions, and I build up some trust. It's really important too.
In trying to get SDS, we found that health and social care in this county weren't terribly aware of the new system. It was new to them, and to expect them to be aware of it was a bit difficult. It was quite upsetting to be told one thing from one place and another thing from another place. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be to learn the new system, to find out what SDS can offer and understand why it's going to make life easier for those in a caring situation.
Come and get to know your local care centre, come and get to know the staff, the services we offer, and work together with us to ensure that carers have a clear and positive route to the information and support that they need. Whenever I meet carers, I certainly will ask them to do the local care centre, especially if I don't see their face on a regular basis, and ask them why don't they access them. There's been people there that have sat in the same room as me, that have walked in the same shoes as me, that have came through difficulties very similar to me. A lot of professionals don't understand them.
It's really important that those working with carers and their families listen carefully to those carers' unique experience of the person they look after. Every situation is completely different, and if health and social care professionals are looking for more support and more training and understanding of how to work best with carers as equal partners in care, they can come to Carers Trust Scotland and get as much help as they need.
That does feel like a little bit of self-promotion, but yes, that's our organisation, our new digital stories that we have. It would be nice to play it, but I think we're running out of time. But all the three carers who were speaking in that video, Kaya, Chris and Sharon, they've all got their own stories that you can watch as well. So hopefully how to be carer aware kind of all made sense there, and it's something that you guys agree with too. So thanks very much again for listening to me waffle on. Keep interrupting, please.
I obviously cover the whole of Scotland. There are so many inconsistencies. Carers throughout, and one gets the assessment and gets access to self-directed support in one area, and someone in exactly the same circumstances in another area doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
The stress of that family is absolutely dreadful.
Yes.
The work it takes to access the services is dreadful. Do you feel now that the new legislation that's coming into place in Scotland will rectify those inconsistencies?
I think it will go some way towards it, because that is the idea of it. Obviously there is still, as I said, the Scottish Government are really, really keen on local authorities having their own autonomy and doing their own thing, which is great if you can get a service that really works for you. But if what they want doesn't match up with what you want, then that's when the difficulty comes. So yes, hopefully it will go some way towards saying, look, there are national standards that apply to all carers, and there are national services that everybody should have access to. That is hopefully what will start to happen. It'll be slow progress, definitely, but again, that's why I get down to Parliament every week and have a go at politicians, is to make sure that that's what they need to do. Thank you very much. I'll be around for a lot of the day. But yeah, sure.
Advanced statements.
Oh yes, yeah.
Do you encourage that in terms of like carers? Because I work in mental health. Do you encourage people at assessment level to complete this advanced statement so that their needs are taken into consideration when you get unwell or
absolutely yes.
So in terms of that guy who had a heart attack, he may be more likely to call for help if he knew there was a plan in place.
Absolutely.
Immediately he called services. So I just wondered if there was any work being done in advanced statements for carers.
I'm not sure about advanced statements specifically. I do have a colleague who works in mental health development who is very, very up to speed with all of that. But the new Act is bringing in emergency and anticipatory planning, which will work alongside advanced statements, and everybody will have something. It might not necessarily be a statutory advanced statement, but there will be a plan in place. There will be a written document saying this is what should happen in X situation. But yeah, I think that's hugely important, because it's the kind of thing that you need to work out when things are calm, when you're well, when the person you're looking after is as well as they can be, rather than it falling into a crisis situation, because then that's when people start to panic and when things go even more wrong. It's really, really important to make sure that social work and other statutory services are on board with that. I think that's going to be the biggest kind of stumbling block, because they'll have to be on standby in a better way than the current emergency social work service is. But I think we'll get there, yes. No, you can't ask any more questions.
In challenging decisions, specifically from social work, in terms of carers, assessments, and self-directed support, do you have any key pieces of advice for us here which best challenge that? They seem to shut down and just say, no's no, and I appreciate there's appeal processes, etc. It's just so complex and stressful.
It is, I agree. I think definitely get support from an organisation like a carers centre, because they can kind of support you with the right things to say and the right things to ask for, and just make sure that you've got that support behind you, and they can tell you that you are doing the right thing and it is right to fight for what you need, but just, you know, I know it's difficult because, you know, it's a very kind of impenetrable department and it can be quite scary, but just, you know, keep at them, because you are entitled, and there will, excuse me, things will change because of this new legislation. Like I said, everybody is going to be entitled to even what we would call like a light touch carers assessment if your caring role isn't particularly strenuous now, but it might be in the future if things change, like if your own health changes. So that's going to start to change now. Social work are going to be more amenable to offering support. Hopefully, again, that's the issue with policy into practice, but they should be changing the way they do things very soon and making sure that everyone is entitled to at least chat with social work, even if it doesn't go through to support. But then if you do need support, it could be put into place quite quickly. But carer centres definitely will help you.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, it's just a quick question. To somebody like myself who has TS, like certain things that are affected, but just wanted to know, what's the whole point behind this? We went to get that PIP thing.
Oh, right, yes, yeah.
And they're doing away with the DLE that you're talking about, but I was just wondering, what's the whole point behind this change?
I think, well, it came out of the referendum that we had a couple of years ago for independence, and, you know, a lot of people felt that Scotland should have more control over benefits for Scottish people.
Yeah.
And so it's just making sure that rather than it being dealt with in London, far away, then it's something that the Scottish Parliament could do, and it will be more easy to change things. I think if you phone the DWP, it won't be that, but and you speak to someone in Scotland who is in your local area and who knows about local support. That is easier than calling a call centre in London or Manchester or wherever. But there is a political aspect to it, which I don't want to go into too much detail because I am politically impartial, as all organisations should be. But there is a political angle to it. The SNP want more things to happen in Scotland, and
I just was wondering at the back of my mind where it all stems from.
All politics. Best not to get involved. But it should. I think it will make a real difference, because things for Scottish people should probably be in Scotland. And if it makes it easier to access benefits, and if it means that we can change things and make things more appropriate for the Scottish population, then I'm all for it. I'll stop talking now. Unless anyone has any more questions. Like I said, I'm going to be here for a while yet, so feel free to come and chat with me at coffee or something. Thank you.
So thank you very much, both Sheila and Heather, for those very informative talks today. As Heather said earlier, the third speaker isn't here, so we can break for lunch just outside the door.